The national self-sabotage that has happened over the last 10 years has to end. That's what I mean by enough is enough. We cannot keep on fighting against these kinds of nation-building projects, these revenue-generating projects, and then still have aspirations to add more and more social programs at the federal level. It doesn't make sense.
I think the buyer's remorse is finally starting to set in for some people, to the point that even CBC had to admit multiple times that they were fools for supporting and cheering on elbows up under Mark Carney. Pierre Poilievre dropped another epic video that uses nothing but the truth and common sense to completely debunk the Liberals' agenda. I'm Jasmine Lane. This is Over Opinionated. Be sure to subscribe, like, follow, comment your thoughts down below, and share this video because we are under arguably one of the biggest machines in Canadian history, which is the state-funded media, government propaganda. Mark Carney also tried to mock the Conservatives. Unfortunately, they brought facts to the table, and it really did not go so well for him. Probably didn't help that even the parliamentary budget officer said that what they're doing doesn't actually make any sense right now. All that and more coming up today on Over Opinionated.
This bill is expected to pass with the support of the Conservative Party, an extraordinary situation to see the official opposition collaborating with the Liberals on this. But the Conservatives did get some partisan shots in yesterday, putting out a press release taking credit for closing loopholes in what the Liberals originally said they would do.
I might get nauseous if I keep listening to that amount of spinning. Imagine CBC trying to say that Conservatives, yeah, they took some shots in this press release and they're claiming the credit because they did it. Like, excuse me? So under the initial Bill C5, which we had criticized on this channel, but as I had hypothesized as well in that video, I said that there's a very good possibility that Bill C5 in its current form is not what the Conservatives are going to be voting in favor of, that they may in fact make some changes to it, and that's what they're doing. And all of that is happening behind the scenes at this very moment. But yes, the new amendments to Bill C5, which the Conservative government voted in favor of, and I think this is a great idea, would prevent Liberal cabinet ministers from benefiting off of bypassing key laws that are currently in place, especially when it comes to transparency and conflicts of interest. So under this Conservative move, we now have the Access to Information Act being protected, the Lobbying Act, Canada Elections Act, Criminal Code, Conflicts of Interest, Investment Canada. There's a whole big list of them. I'll put it up on screen for you here. And so, yeah, this does matter a lot. And for CBC to try to spin it as, oh, they're taking credit and taking shots, they did it. Yeah, they're taking credit. They're absolutely taking credit for changing a bill so that it is far more beneficial to absolutely everybody and doesn't give the government unprecedented powers, while speeding up these nation-building projects without having a veto against everything that doesn't suit your ideology like the original bill had proposed. How CBC should have discussed that would have just so simply been, we can all thank the Conservatives for having our best interest.
A previous Liberal Prime Minister used to say the dangers about being the head waiters to the provinces, and it seems that that's all you guys want to talk about is provinces, territories, but national interest, by its definition, has to reign over provincial interest. So, for example, the Prime Minister has said publicly that that premiers have a veto, like David Eby has said he will not support a pipeline to the Pacific, even though it would be in our national interest to get our energy to other markets. Minister, is there a national interest here, or are you only serving up for the provinces?
I am so happy that right now this is a moment of a degree of national unity and consensus around this effort of a kind I have never seen before. That meeting in Saskatoon, a province, as we know, which has a Conservative government, was a meeting with more unity around free interprovincial trade and getting major projects built than any meeting of provinces, territories in the federal government I have been present at. And so, Mr. Albus, I see no benefit and a great deal of harm at this moment when the provinces are all stepping up, in the federal government somehow saying, we're going to push you guys around. The fact is, we don't need to. The provinces are doing a great job.
This is why we have a prime minister and a federal cabinet, is to decide what the national interest is. That actually is your job. But besides that, I would just go back. I'd like just to go to
our
Minister
job in the
LeBlanc.
national interest, in fact, is to work collaboratively with provinces and territories where we can. You get
it's either a crisis or it's not, Minister. It's either an emergency
honey
or
can be
it's
better
not.
than vinegar sometimes in building consensus.
I would like to see a
right
list.
now, that's what's happening.
I would like to see a
believe
list,
even
Minister,
the Conservatives are voting for this
initiatives
legislation.
Coming from my federal
and I'm
government.
happy about
Thank
that
you.
too.
Mr. Speaker, this week Canada hosted the G7, and one of the people on the Prime Minister's invitation list was the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia currently has a sweetheart deal with Canada, shipping over $2 billion worth of Saudi oil a year to our Canadian East Coast. Alberta oil shipped to the same place would face extremely onerous reporting requirements on upstream and downstream emissions, yet no such requirements exist for Saudi oil. Why?
We are going to support our conventional and renewable energy business by getting the One Canadian Canada Act passed. It will grow our conventional economy. It will grow our conventional energy business. It will grow our renewable business. We hope our colleagues across the aisle will get on board.
It is so unbelievably shameful. And again, just goes to show how little these people know about what they do and how incapable they are of doing their job, or incompetent perhaps, because as they speak in the House, the earpiece, you're being told what to say. Yeah, I can repeat that. Got it. Or they're always reading the same statement over and over from a piece of paper, which is such a massive contrast to the Conservative Party of Canada, who actually knows what they're talking about.
Mr. Speaker, I'll note that the Liberal members seem incapable of using the word pipeline or oil in the House of Commons. Let me keep this simple. It is a fact that the emissions reporting requirement on Saudi oil being sold in Canada is less stringent than for Canadian oil being sold in Canada. Who in this Liberal government wants to stand now to defend this incomprehensible policy?
Well, we support oil and the development of all energy options across this great country, but we also support the Indigenous community, Mr. Speaker, because we realize as a country we must engage the Indigenous community, for even for them, this is a journey of economic and social justice. The benefits of anything we do, oil or gas or development that engages the Indigenous people, will be long-lasting, Mr. Speaker. We must reach all the people of our great country, including the Indigenous community, in every corner of our country.
Really? Because we just discussed the plan of Bill C-5, which under the Liberal government was actually going to breach the Indian Act, the Hazardous Products Act, the Auditor General Act, Official Languages Act, Trade Unions Act, Explosives Act, among so many other things. So if it wasn't for the Conservatives, everything that you just said would have been effectively something you could totally breach with no conflicts or research into it at all going forward. So that is just fascinating.
This week, in this House, the Parliament has the opportunity to pass the core of our domestic economic response, the One Canadian Economy Act, because together, we as Canadians can give ourselves far more than the Americans can ever take away.
Unfortunately, that is simply not true. We have an epic clip coming up from Danielle Smith and Scott Moe, respective premiers of both Alberta and Saskatchewan. But first, let's listen to CBC admitting, oh, yikes, what have we done?
You know, when the Prime Minister says we can give ourselves far more than any other country can take away, I get the rhetorical argument there, but boy, that U.S. economy is just so massive and so big, and I just don't know if interprovincial trade barriers and finding domestic procurement options for steel and aluminum can offset just what, you know, the further erosion of that economic relationship can do.
Look, you're absolutely right. I mean, Mark Carney can talk as tough as he wants, but the fact of the matter is, you know, almost 80% of our trade is south of the border. We have to try to live through the Donald Trump years. And we can't just overnight diversify our trade to India or China or anywhere else in the world, or Europe for that matter. It's just the economies are too integrated.
They sure are. And it is also a fact that the Canadian government, previously under Justin Trudeau, spent a decade trying to diversify our assets. But yeah, nobody wanted them. And as Kirk Lubimov says in this post on X, never mind attracting foreign investment into Canada, Canada can't even attract Canadian investment into Canada. Here is a share of Canada's pension plan that's invested in Canada. And yep, it's at all-time lows, with 47% of it invested in the United States.
And you see that because the entire rhetoric of the campaign, the elbows up, we're taking the fight to Donald Trump, disappeared after the election was over. The Prime Minister is very complimentary to the President, who obviously loves that, for commercial reasons, because he thinks that sucking up to Donald Trump will get us the best deal. I think the Canadian government assumed that there was going to be movement, and that's why we did not see counter tariffs and movements, and that's why we saw the news that we had today.
And what about Mark Carney? It's been 100 days. What has he done?
Of breaking his promises and hiding from accountability. He refuses to table a spring budget while massively increasing government spending and keeping the parliamentary budgeting officer in the dark. And just like Trudeau, this guy can't even get a tax cut right. He promised $800, yet the average Canadian will only save $90 this year. Wow. Not even enough to get a hot chocolate from Tim Hortons weekly. So did this Prime Minister mislead Canadians during the election? Is he misleading them now, or both?
Yeah. Mr. Speaker, I recognize the job of Prime Minister comes with many responsibilities. I didn't know addition and division were one of them. The parliamentary budget officer refers to the reductions for all Canadians. The vote that the members opposite supported this government on delivers a tax cut for the 22 million Canadians who pay taxes and drive this country forward.
Coming from the guy that doesn't even do his own grocery shopping, he's bragging about a $90 tax cut this year when his government's policies raised the cost of groceries $800. He's broken all of his promises, spending, tax cuts, high-priced consultants, and he's all elbows down on the U.S. And while he's begging on his knees in front of Trump, Canadians have high grocery prices, unaffordable homes, and rising crime. But wait, everyone should be grateful for a $90 tax cut this year. Why doesn't he just reverse his disastrous policies, drop a spring budget, and actually lower taxes for Canadians?
Mr. Speaker, once again, a tax cut is a cut for those who pay taxes.
Of which Mark Carney did not under Brookfield. Yep, and to the tune, by the way, of some of the largest tax evasion in Canadian history, totaling around $5 billion. Thanks to his offshore tax havens.
22 million Canadians pay taxes in this country. 86% of that tax cut goes to those in the first two tax brackets. When you have a two-earner family, the maximum tax cut is $840 a year. The members opposite think it's irrelevant. It's relevant for Canadians. It's building this economy. We're glad they voted for it. They just happen to have forgotten now.
Wow, this is severe deja vu, similar to Justin Trudeau saying 8 out of 10 Canadians get back more than they pay, even though the parliamentary budget officer said that was not true. And in fact, the vast majority of Canadians, 8 out of 10, spent more than what they got back. And here he is again, after being proven by the parliamentary budget officer, who actually released a report saying that that tax break is only going to save the average family of two people $280 a year, not $825 as Mark Carney had promised, which even that is pathetic.
It would seem to me that they mean by operating the spending on the operation of government, and everything else is maybe going into the capital side. Does that make sense to you? Like, is that fiscally appropriate?
I would say no is the easy answer, but we don't know exactly what they mean.
Fair, yeah.
Do they mean, for example, investment in labor market training because that will increase the productive capacity of the economy, and they will start considering that as capital investments as opposed to operating expenditures, transfers to provinces for infrastructure. So it's anybody's guess at this point.
I can't help how insulted I feel listening to these billionaire, millionaire liberal cabinet ministers be like, you guys should be so grateful that we gave you 77 cents per day. And that is totally enough to bribe you into not caring about what we're doing with your money, apparently. But just trust us and know that we're doing things that are going to be, best for the environment. Yeah, climate change. And it's totally it's gonna leapfrog us. For sure.
This isn't about the environment. It's about control. You're imposing a top-down command and control scheme designed in boardrooms, not garages. They didn't ask us what we wanted. They dictated. And now we'll pay more to get less. Fewer choices, higher costs, longer wait times, all in the middle of a cost of living crisis. So here's what we Conservatives will do. We will repeal the ZEV mandate, scrap the industrial carbon tax, cancel the Liberal fuel standards that punish us and make our lives more expensive. We'll trust Canadians, you, to make your own choices. And we'll unleash the power of the free market.
The national self-sabotage that has happened over the last 10 years has to end. That's what I mean by enough is enough. We cannot keep on fighting against these kinds of nation-building projects, these revenue-generating projects, and then still have aspirations to add more and more social programs at the federal level. It doesn't make sense. If you want to support the expansion of social programs to help your people, you've got to generate wealth to tax in order to be able to do it. And I think that is probably the West has gotten around to understanding that faster than some of our friends in the East, but that's okay. And we can work with a coalition of the willing of the Western provinces and territories, which seems to be solidifying. This is I think the reason why the port-to-port concept has gotten such traction with the territorial and provincial leaders, is that we can all see how we can benefit from it. And we're trying to find ways to have our friends in Eastern Canada benefit too, but maybe they have to develop their own projects and their own ideas. Quebec has substantial natural gas resources, and they should develop their own pipelines for their own interests to wean themselves off their reliance on gas from the United States. They should use it to develop their own royalty structure so they can develop their own revenue to pay for their own services for their own people, so that they don't have to rely on transfers that largely come from Western Canada to be able to do it.
The gulf between where we are and where we need to get to is simply a differential of policies. Policies really matter. And when you look at the policies that have been introduced federally over the last decade and what they have done, or the impact, positive or negative, that they've had on the Canadian economy, or specifically the natural resource economy, largely based in Western Canada, versus the policies that have come from a government like the government of Alberta or the government of Saskatchewan, that have always been put in place, yes, to protect our environment and to include all people that can be included and involved in those investments, but have always been put in place with the eye to bringing that project, bringing that investment to our province, to our nation, for the betterment of all Canadians. And so what we hear in words from this new Prime Minister in the existing government are very good. And I would say they're strong statements that are being made. Over the next number of weeks and months, those statements are very quickly going to have to transition into actions. Actions in the way of repealing certain pieces of legislation, changing a number of regulations, and ultimately changing some significant pieces of legislation like the Environmental Impact Assessment Act.
That's, I think, an important national conversation for us to have. But I can tell you that I'm far more interested in working with the coalition of the willing, with those who already get it and already see how we can mutually help each other, rather than trying to push water up a hill. Let's just work with the projects that we know can be successful in short order, benefit us all, and then we can expand the conversation to those who are a little more slowly getting the picture. But I think everybody is coming around to understanding that being on Team Canada means these kinds of projects have to go ahead. We can't just keep saying no.
But they will keep saying no, because Mark Carney does not want oil and gas. Plain and simple. He has said that in his book. He has said that somewhat in hidden ways when he's been talking to the press about it as well. Decarbonized oil. Bro, I thought you were supposed to be a genius. What the heck is that? But I wanted to point you to this because I was just curious yesterday. So I decided to go into the stock market and see what the trends are for Brookfield and their renewable section. And what I found is that everybody, including Mark Carney, knows that renewables are not the future at all, which makes perfect sense why he is pushing for them so hard in Canada, probably to get that stock back up, right? Because he wants Canada to be 100% renewable, ideally. It was the NDP who said that in a statement which we aired in yesterday's episode, but Mark Carney's book Values, which I have read twice, has also said very similar things with different timeframes. Meanwhile, the renewable energy company of which he chaired and will likely chair again as soon as he's done being prime minister, has lost value 7.99% over the last 5 years. In fact, they peaked during the pandemic when all of that was being pushed, and they have been on a downward trend ever since, over 5 years. So if this is his green revolution, if this is what he thinks the future is, what's going to leapfrog us, explain that to me. Let's stop the parade, admit failure. I know that's hard to do, but just recognize that this has nothing to do with the environment. This has nothing to do with economic prosperity. This has to do with your conflicts of interest. This has to do with, for lack of better words, grifters in the climate sector. And Pierre Poilievre calls that out factually and truthfully right here.
So in 10 years, gas-powered vehicle sales will be banned altogether. And now, manufacturers and importers that don't meet the quota must buy pricey credits as high as $20,000 a car, a cost that's obviously going to be passed on to consumers. So prices go up, choice goes down, and it's a decree from a government that thinks it knows better than the rest of us and is perfectly willing to make our lives more expensive and difficult to pay for it. And Mark Carney wants to go even further. Back in 2021, in his book Values, he said, quote,
"A host of other fiscal and regulatory policies made by governments can be highly effective in setting out the contours of a net zero economy, including regulations to phase out the sale of new internal combustion vehicles in the next decade."
So if you followed that schedule, they'd be banned altogether by 2031, even faster than the current Liberal government plan. But let's be honest, Canada is not a small, flat, warm country that is easy to get around. It's a vast, cold, resource-producing country where millions of us drive long distances to get to work, feed our families, and haul supplies. And yet the Liberal government wants to ban the technology that works the best, internal combustion engines, and force us all into driving electric vehicles, whether the grid is ready or not, whether the charging network exists or not, or whether we can afford it or not. The CAA found that EVs lose 40% of their battery life in cold weather, and that was tested in just -7 to -15 weather conditions, practically balmy compared to winters in Winnipeg, Thunder Bay, and much of rural Canada. This is not about reducing emissions. It's about imposing elite ideology on the common people.
So I don't know, guys. Are you happy with what the Liberal government has been able to accomplish thus far? It's the last day of sitting Parliament, by the way, before they rise for the summer, despite the Greens, NDP, Bloc, and Conservative Party all saying that they were willing to work through the summer in order to get some things done during this national crisis that we currently have. I'm very curious what the news cycle is going to be over the next couple of months. I'm Jasmine Lane. This is Over Opinionated. Be sure to subscribe, follow, like, share, comment your thoughts down below, and hang in there because I can't do this without you, okay? I need you. I'll talk to you tomorrow.